Hello and welcome to Big Deal. I'm Nisha Podar. Now let's put the spotlight today on Ocen, or Open Credit Enablement Network, which is a digital infrastructure being created by the government to democratize the small ticket credit market in India, in line with the financial inclusion focus of the government. Now, simply put, under Ocen, gateway small sachet loans to small businesses will be possible by a collaborative network of the front-end apps which are into digital commerce and have the reach, and the lenders which have the ability to disperse loans but do not have the reach. Now, this will reduce the effort and customer acquisition costs for the lenders, which was a big deterrent in serving the businesses with low ticket cash flow requirements. Let me welcome on the show Hrushikesh Mehta from Ocen, who's right here in the studio with us, and Deepak Sharma of Kotak Mahindra Bank, who's joining us online. Now, welcome, gentlemen, to the show. Now, my first question to you, Hrushikesh, what is the intent through Ocen, which you're developing, and what is the rollout timeline that we are looking at?
Sure. So thanks for having me on the show. So let's talk about the problem that Ocen is trying to solve going forward. So one of the major issues is that when you have manual processing of loans or acquisition of loans, there's always a cost, because there's a cost to people.
Yes.
When you do it digitally, that cost reduces.
Yes.
And what happens is then the ticket size of the loans can come down. The second issue is, if you have to have it manual, you have to have people physically there. When you're digital, you can do it completely remotely. You can do it in far-flung areas where maybe lenders don't have a presence.
Yes.
And what that basically does is make small ticket sachet loans available to those who are underserved today.
Yes.
So that was the overall the thinking behind having this done and building it as a public digital good. So the friction of the costs, right? Otherwise, you typically, if a private sector company did this, there would be a cost involved, and that cost would mean, eventually the consumer pays the cost, and that makes it more expensive.
Yes.
Now, in terms of rolling it out, so obviously it's been conceptualized, and typically we do this the same way, in almost every public digital good. And I'll draw a comparison to UPI, which I think everyone is familiar with. So Bheem was built on UPI by the government.
Yes.
To showcase what was possible, because no one could believe you could just have a phone number and your debit card pin and you could send money in 30 seconds as small as 1 rupee.
Yes.
And it would be so friction-free and work so well.
Yes.
So once the infrastructure was created, we said, let's build reference implementations so that the market can see how to use this.
Yes.
So in the first phase, we've built out a pilot with the government e-marketplace,
Right.
which is a platform where the government organizations actually purchase goods, and from small traders like MSMEs who have turnover of 10 to 15 lakhs sometimes in a year. So they are less affluent than even salaried people.
Yes.
So what we've been able to do is, when they win purchase orders, one major issue with MSMEs is they purchase with cash but sell on credit usually.
Yes.
So there's always a gap, there's a liquidity issue.
Yes.
And credit can solve that.
Yes.
So we said, let's try it over there.
Yes.
And we've started giving loans. It's very small, as you know, with anything of this scale, it's a hard grind trying to build it. But we have gone live. We've given about 3,500 loans, about 13.8 crores worth of loans. The smallest loan, and this is what we are most proud of, is 160 rupees.
Right.
And the largest loan is about 10 lakhs, average ticket size 40,000. And you're giving it to the segment. Otherwise, that wouldn't be entertained by lenders if it was a manual.
All right. So very, very important. The ticket size from 160 rupees to 10 lakh. So very wide gamut is what
Right.
you're covering here, Hrushikesh. But one important takeaway for me is it's also in line with what ONDC is trying to create. That is the collaboration of lenders as well as the apps, right?
Right.
So various participants coming together to create that network. Now, let me hop across to Deepak and include him in the conversation. So, Deepak, Kotak Mahindra Bank is one of the few largest banks in the country which has been an early adopter of Ocen. You have collaborated with them. How does it make business sense for you?
Oh, great. Thanks, Nisha. I think great question, because a lot of people want to jump in the party when it's already crowded. I think we took the opportunity to be in early to understand how this whole construct and the network is coming together, because it's equally important when you are building a new business is to understand the contours of business. Unlike traditional business, which was based on a balance sheet or based on financials, here the underlying credit decision model is very different, because you are looking at the data, which is invoices supplied on the government e-marketplace by small businesses or sole proprietor. So in many ways, this is still, I wouldn't call it a sachet side business, but definitely it's relatively small in ticket size, smaller in tenure, and a very different kind of a credit and a risk model that it takes. So we took this opportunity to be among the first banks to start lending on open platform, because it helped us look at a new business rule engine as to how should we be looking at this data real time, setting up our parameter of credit approval, and then enabling the real time disbursement of these loans on the platform.
Right.
And we have been able to do all of this as a part of our initial rollout that we have done on Open.
Yes.
I think important part of this is we are seeing very interesting data. Like what Rishi mentioned, he saw average ticket size of 40,000. Obviously, as a bank, with whatever our initial rules were, our average ticket size was about 1 lakh. So we have started to still look at relatively a lower value credit than traditionally we underwrite. And I think a lot of this opens up new frontiers about how we like to build and scale up this business going forward.
Right. So line of credit is the lifeline of all businesses, and why should the small businesses be deprived of that? So that's an important one, Rishikesh. But so one important aspect is also, like payments gateway created within minutes, you could transact online. Within minutes, now credit can be given online. How does this work? And within minutes, how do lenders really recognize the loan, figure out the credit acceptability and asset quality, and work on those parameters?
Sure. So look, previously it was done manually, and this manual versus digital always is going to come up there. And the only way you can serve large masses of people if everything is completely automated.
Right.
So at a very a basic level, there are like 4 or 5 steps in the process. One is, can you get consent-based data? So the user should know that they are sharing their data for this purpose of being offered a loan. Now this data, which will include some platform data, so GEM provides how sellers have been transacting. You could get maybe GST invoice data. You get bank statement data through the account aggregator, which is another public good, which is just launched last year in September. And then you get credit bureau data from the credit bureaus. So these 4 pieces of data can be used to, and they're all machine readable, right? It's all digital, to actually instantly run the credit policy, and you come out with an offer. And that's the interest rate, the size of the loan, and all that. This is shown to the user. They select it. They proceed to do KYC, which can be done via Aadhaar, the Udyam registration certificate. They then provide a disbursal account. They sign an agreement, which can be done with Aadhaar e-sign. And then minutes later, the loan is disbursed. So, there's also the setup of the e-natch, or, to be able to collect the loan, obviously, later.
Yes.
But it's actually within 10 minutes, the money is in the account of the person. And this is the beauty of this, right? So if you actually spoke to MSMEs, it takes anywhere from a few days to 2 weeks, usually, to get a rejection for this sort of ticket size. Now, within 10 minutes, they have money in the account. And that is the leapfrog, I think, that we've been able to, do at a very small scale. And now the challenge is to try to scale that.
Right. So more transactions via the network, that is going to be the real aim. But Deepak, about the credit worthiness, banks put so much importance to the asset quality. How do you do that in minutes? How has your experience been so far? And what, in your view, how will the execution really work, and the execution challenges that you may foresee in this?
No, I think this is a very different business, as I was telling you, Nisha, unlike our traditional business, because of 3 or 4 things. One is, this is all based on the cash flow that we see on a platform, because today, like on a government e-marketplace, any small seller, when he or she uploads their invoice and decides to borrow against that, it can be anywhere between 2 weeks to 2 months. We do know that in the event of borrower either will pay or the supplier is going to pay as and when there is a supply due date. So it works in a very different construct through which these short-term loans against a particular invoice is provided. Of course, we run a set of rules which will only get fine-tuned over a period of time, and that hopefully will bring either lower threshold or much wider access. But I think more importantly, right now, what we were doing initially was we were only offering this to customers who were KYC'd with us. So they were onboarded by Kotak. But in next few weeks, we are also opening it up to non-customers of the bank. That means we'll be able to onboard customers real time along with taking a credit decision data on them. And I think as we compress both these journeys, that's ability to take a decision, but at the same time also onboard customers digitally, I think we'll be able to build a completely new business model of the real-time credit and a real-time customer onboarding, both compressed into one.
All right. A very important takeaway from what you said, Deepak, is that you'll have to create a new model. We'll talk more about that, and Hrushikesh will talk much more about the onboarding process, which is so critical to the success of Ocen. With that, we'll slip into a short breather on Big Deal, but come back for more discussion on Ocen and its rollout plans, as well as what it will mean for the credit market in India.